Skilled hands, delicate flesh, and white bones, with thousands of hidden weapons killing all directions. Humble and modest in speech, with a smile that captures the soul. She was a young master of the divine medicine sect in the 23rd century, but once she traveled through time, she became a disfigured, useless, and powerless abandoned woman with no face, money, or power. You almost got raped by someone. Great, she's going to backhand and leave with the scumbag first. Next, we will make money, store grain, accumulate social connections, and become famous all over the world to seek revenge. What is starting from scratch? Consider it as an addiction to the wealthy generation. When she became famous all over the world, the scumbag said he wants to turn things around. General Sha Shen. Believe it or not, let grass grow on your grave next year. Chapter 1. Night Rain and Ringing Bell. You are listening at novel full.audio. The thunderous sound from near to far, and then from far to near, with the momentum of tearing through the night, drew a torrential rain. And yang gui chi wang fu pian yuan. Yi Suan opened her eyes in confusion and saw a sleazy man with disheveled clothes picking at her clothes. She was immediately frightened and swung her fist towards the man's face. The man was caught off guard and fell to the ground by Yi Suan. He opened his mouth wide as he was about to shout, but was blocked tightly by Yi Suan's quick grasp of something. The man was shocked and frightened, but Yi Suan gave a cold smile and with a snap in the man's frightened gaze, twisted his neck. She was the young master of the divine medicine sect in the 23rd century, with simple hands, delicate flesh, and white bones, and 1,000 hidden weapons killing all directions. Daring to eat her tofu, isn't it just boring? Yi Suan asked Sha Shen to get up and take a glance at the surrounding environment. At the end of her memory, she was invited to attend an international exchange conference, as if someone had caused a riot. With a loud bang, she lost consciousness. Why would you wake up here? Yi Suan couldn't figure it out, and the more she thought about it, the more she felt a headache and a splitting sensation. Her head seemed to explode, and many memories that did not belong to her surged up like a tide. She has traveled, and this body is also called Yi Suan. She is the useless disciple of Hua Baichao, a renowned physician in the hidden world of Anyang. A month ago, Hua Baichao cured the emperor of Anyang. As a reward, she was married to the emperor's son, Qin Lin, who was shameless, wealthy, powerless, and powerless. It's okay if the door is not in the right place. Qin Lin already has a crush and doesn't even care about her. Unfortunately, that guy doesn't dare to resist orders, so he can work hard on her. Firstly, the design poisoned her appearance, and then during her wedding, she played a game of stealing dragons and turning phoenixes, causing her beloved to replace her. She also became infatuated and arranged for someone to tarnish her. The original owner couldn't bear to be humiliated, so he crashed into a pillar and committed suicide. Yi Su touched her forehead, which was still bleeding, and the top priority was to stop the bleeding first. She neatly tore off a corner of her wedding dress and gave herself a simple bandage. Then he cast a cold glance at the lewd man on the ground who had already lost his breath. He didn't stop after her original body died. It seems that he had already arranged the charges for her and made up his mind to make her lose her reputation. Even if she died, she wouldn't be able to live a peaceful life. Now that she inherits this body, she naturally wants to inherit her kindness and resentment as well. The rain has stopped and the wind is still, and the night is getting darker. The guests who came to attend the wedding banquet also dispersed early. Yi Suan avoided the public's ears and eyes, and hung the body of the sleazy man at the entrance of the palace under the cover of night, pretending to commit suicide. Do you want to ruin her reputation? Unfortunately, she is not a little white rabbit like the original owner who allows people to knead and flatten her. She believes in both good and bad, and she must repay them twice. After leaving the Prince Chi's mansion, she followed her memory and arrived at a small courtyard with 2 entrances. She and her master lived in seclusion in the mountains. A month ago, the Emperor of Anyang fell seriously ill, and even the most prestigious doctors in the country were invited over, including her master. This small courtyard is where they are now settling. Master Shijing, besides her, there is only one newly recruited servant by her side, named Jun Qianzi. The red silk in front of the courtyard has not yet been collected. It looks like a festive scene, but the courtyard is deserted. Fearing to disturb Master Qingmeng, Yi Suan did not walk through the main gate, but chose to climb over the wall and enter. Unexpectedly, as she was about to stand firm, she ran into Hua Baichao pacing back and forth in the corridor. "Master?" Yi Su asked hesitantly as she spoke. Hua Baichao was taken aback for a moment, then took a big step forward and looked at Yi Su, asking about the wound on her forehead with concern. "Miss Yi, why are you back at this time? What's wrong with the injury on your head?" Thinking of the original owner who had already returned to heaven, Yi Suan suddenly felt a dull pain in her heart. She hoarsely said, "Master, I want to separate from you." "He Li." Hua Baichao looked at Yi Suan with suspicion, as if unable to believe that these words were actually spoken from Yi Suan's mouth. Yi Suan nodded solemnly, thinking that Hua Baichao did not agree. She then explained, "The king of Qi has already had a crush on me. Today, he married me, but in fact, the one who paid his respects to him was Miss Shuero from the Sun Yusher family. He abandoned me in a secluded courtyard and let people bully me. If he doesn't leave, he doesn't know how to challenge me in the future. Master is alone, living for such a long time is enough, and I hope you can be well. Now that you have figured it out, let go and do it without any worries." Hua Baichao sighed and then asked, "Is this injury on your head also caused by the king of Qi?" Yi Suan lowered her head without saying a word, and Hua Baichao casually assumed it as her default. She patted her shoulder with relief and choked up, saying, "Come in, master, take a good look." Yi Suan obediently responded. At that moment, a rapid knocking sound came from the door. Fearing that the people from the Prince Qi's mansion were coming to cause trouble, Yi Su gestured to Chao Hua Baichao and hurriedly hid in Jun Qianzi's room. At that time, Jun Qianzi was sleeping soundly. She changed her wedding dress and put on Jun Qianzi's outerwear. Looking in the mirror, I saw the person in the mirror with clear eyebrows, almond eyes, and cherry lips. Unfortunately, the forehead was broken, and there was a large black spot on the left face, which appeared to be a birthmark but actually accumulated toxins. Although this poison may seem terrifying, she still has a way to cure it and is not in a hurry. She brought hemostatic powder and re-treated the wound on her forehead. In a moment, Hua Baichao walked in with a solemn expression. "Someone in the palace said that your majesty has a sudden emergency and wants me to enter the palace immediately. Please stay at home and don't go anywhere." After finishing speaking, he was about to leave, and Yi Suan quickly grabbed the person. "I'll go with my master. The matter is of great importance, you'll be at home." Hua Baichao waved his hand, clearly disagreeing. Yi Suan interrupted directly, "Master has just agreed to divorce me, but my disciple's marriage is bestowed by His Majesty. Without His Majesty's consent, how can we be satisfied?" Hua Baichao then lowered his face and explained earnestly to Yi Suan, "Although your majesty has been ill for a long time, how could he have suddenly experienced an emergency on the day of King Qi's wedding to you? This must be quite complicated, so don't join in the fun." However, Yi Suan said, "It is precisely because I have thought of these that I do not want my master to go alone." Hua Baichao was stunned for a moment, then relieved and sighed, "Miss Yi has grown up." Yi Suan grinned and coquettishly pushed Hua Baichao out. The eunuch who came to pick up the person was the eunuch who served beside the empress and summoned Duke Fu. At first sight of Yi Su asking, he was stunned for a moment, but he didn't say anything. The group entered the palace gate and headed straight to the emperor's bedroom. At that time, the palace people were in chaos, and the empress stood guard by the bed with a gloomy expression on her face. "Go and see, why hasn't Dr. Hua come yet?" "Yes," the nanny in charge blessed her body and hurriedly walked out the door. The empress then asked the minister of the imperial hospital, Mr. Zhang, you said your majesty is in a hurry, but with these many laxatives, your majesty still hasn't woken up. If you can't do the job of the minister of the imperial hospital well, why don't you find someone capable? Zhang Dezheng immediately bowed to express his determination, Madam, calm down, I will do my best. The empress let out a cold snort, raised her phoenix eyes, and the remaining light swept towards the door. Do your best. If your majesty cannot be cured, you will all be buried together. Almost as soon as the empress finished speaking, a group of imperial physicians, each in danger, coincidentally stopped their affairs and knelt down to beg for mercy. Yi Suwen had never seen this battle before. She stretched her neck and wanted to take a second look, but Hua Baichao blocked her tightly behind her. Could you please inform me, Grandpa? Hua Baichao arched his hand at Duke Fu. Chapter 2. Transactions. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. At this moment, the Empress had already walked over. The person who had just been furious was full of anxiety in his eyes, and even his tone of voice was much more polite. Dr. Hua doesn't need to be bound by common customs, it's important to show your majesty his illness. Hua Baichao was ordered to come forward to diagnose the emperor's pulse, and Yi Suwen followed closely behind. After a moment of contemplation and questioning, Hua Baichao said, Your Majesty, this illness is coming with great momentum, but it seems like liver depression and qi stagnation, urgent and heart-wrenching. However, before he could finish speaking, the queen slammed the teacup with a loud bang. Urgent attack on the heart. Your Majesty has been resting in this Dragon Song Hall since returning from the wedding banquet of King Qi. During this time, he has not seen anyone and has not dealt with political affairs. How could a well-behaved person be eager to attack the heart? Accompanying the ruler is like accompanying a tiger, and the flowers and herbs kneel down like a group of imperial physicians. The queen felt flustered when she saw it. Someone, drag these useless things out of this palace. Put them in jail. Madam, spare your life. Please spare your life. For a moment, mournful cries echoed one after another. At this moment, Yi Suwen stood up and calmly threw herself to the ground, saying, Your Majesty's lips are pale purple and her face is pale. Her body is feverish and her breath is weak, and she has a sudden onset of illness. After vomiting blood, she faints and does not wake up. She has taken a decoction to clear the fire, but there is no improvement at all. The little girl thinks this is not an urgent attack on her heart, but a sign of poisoning. In an instant, as if the air had solidified, the howling suddenly came to an end, and there was silence all around, so quiet that even a needle could be heard falling. The Empress seemed to have only noticed Yi Su's question at this moment, and she exclaimed in surprise, Princess Qi. Why are you here? Your Majesty, this illness can be cured by a young woman, Yi Su asked as she looked at the Empress with bright eyes, her ears, nose, and mouth. I have heard that you have been with Dr. Hua for more than 10 years, but you have no medical skills at all, but I don't know when you have this ability. The Empress squinted her eyes and scrutinized Yi Su, asking. Yi Suwen smiled and said, After 3 days of separation, we should look forward to each other. Yesterday's me is no longer today's me. In the Empress's impression, Yi Su was timid and cowardly. In such a scene, she should have been nervous and unable to speak. She seemed to be a bit different, but could she also speak about medical skills? The queen doesn't know. But she knew that the emperor's illness could no longer be delayed. Her gaze signaled to the guard to stop, and she immediately said coldly, I will trust you once, but if your Majesty doesn't improve, there will be your good fruit to eat. With the Empress's permission, Yi Suwen was not in a hurry to treat the emperor. Instead, she sat on the ground and raised the price. I am confident that I can protect your Majesty, but if I want to act, I must have the Empress agree to one condition. She said the Empress clearly did not expect that at this moment, Yi Suwen dared to make conditions to her, and immediately laughed angrily. If you can cure your Majesty, not to mention one condition, 10 of our palaces will agree. But if you cannot cure it, your 10 lives will not be enough for our palace to kill you. 10 conditions, everyone present has heard of them. Empress Dowager, as the Empress, you cannot go back on your word. Everyone knows that the Empress's words are angry, but Yi Suwen is trying to take them seriously. With so many people watching, the Empress really can't change her mind and can only say in frustration, as soon as I say a word, it's hard to trace it. But you also need to have a life to enjoy. It doesn't bother the Empress. By the way, the first condition for the little girl is to be at peace with the King of Qi. The Empress should not let the little girl down. Yi Suwen winked slyly, and then pulled out the silver needle from Hua Baicao's medicine chest, as if to give the Emperor acupuncture and moxibustion. The hall fell silent again. In a short moment, the Empress realized what Yi Su had asked. Absurdity, the Queen shouted loudly. You only got married to the King of Qi in the daytime, and now you want a divorce. What's the point? She stared coldly at Yi Suwen, like a venomous snake in the grass, staring at the prey in the picture, ready to attack at any time. King Qi is her legitimate son, and when calculated, Yi Suwen should be her legitimate daughter. In law. Before this, she had also seen Yi Su ask a few times. She used to think she was a weak, honest, and inconspicuous silly girl, not worth worrying about. At this moment, she felt as if she had never met Yi Suwen. Yi Suwen remained calm and said, if the one who married the King of Qi was a little girl, then she should be having sex with the Prince of Qi's mandarin duck in the Prince of Qi's mansion at this time, not here. As she finished speaking, she gave the Empress a faint glance and said, the young lady is going to give the Emperor an injection. The Queen naturally knew what she meant. Despite being filled with anger, she remained rational and remained silent. Yi Suwen asked the palace attendants to lift the Emperor up and immediately began to inject needles into the Emperor's major acupoints, as if this set of needle techniques had been practiced countless times in her heart. She lifted, inserted, twisted, and inserted the needles as if they were divine. The exquisite technique was dazzling. However, in an instant, the Emperor spat out a mouthful of black blood. Although he was not clear-headed, his expression appeared calm, as if his illness had eased a lot. How is your Majesty? The Empress asked urgently. Yi Suwen, however, was not busy answering. Instead, he calmly put away the silver needle and then gestured to the hospital with his eyes. Zhang Yuan approached with a knowing expression, and after observing, smelling, and cutting, he exclaimed with joy, my pulse is floating and my breath is stable. My mouth and lips are pale pink, and I am doing well. Princess Qi is really hiding it. Really. The Empress couldn't help but feel overjoyed and muttered to herself, God bless us, our ancestors have appeared. Yi Suwen was not sad or unhappy, but only reminded the Empress in a business manner, Your Majesty has improved. Should the Empress fulfill her promise to the young lady? The Empress then put away her joy and lifted her airs, saying in a deep voice, I will naturally not back out on what I promised. Let your Majesty wake up first. At that moment, a hoarse voice came. Water. Cough. Water. Is the Emperor awake? The Empress was momentarily stunned and immediately ordered the palace maids to fetch water. Besides drinking water, what other discomfort does your Majesty have? The Empress asked with concern. In response to her, it was the constant coughing of the Emperor. Your Majesty is still weak and needs rest, Yi Su asked as she discussed the matter, her clear eyes fixed on the Empress. The Empress's status was noble, and due to her Majesty, ordinary people dared not even look at her directly. Ling Buting was stared at by Yi Suwen, and the Empress suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. If my palace promises something, I won't go back on it. But according to what you just said, it's not you who married the King of Qi in the daytime. What's going on? Yi Su asked about the invisible curling of her lips. She had already figured out a solution, afraid that the Empress wouldn't mention this. In the daytime, the little girl was beaten by someone's head in front of the sedan chair, locked in the wardrobe, and only woke up in the evening. There was a wound on her forehead as evidence. I heard from my master that the king of Qi had already married someone, and the little girl realized that although her majesty had suggested marriage before her, her name was not right and her words were not smooth. If we were to separate from his highness and be well, please let the empress fulfill her wishes. As Yi Suan spoke, he removed the bandage from his head, revealing the dried wound and placing himself in the position of the victim. Chapter 3. Face-to-face confrontation. You are listening at novel full.audio. The empress gave a glance to the envoy of Zhang Yuan, who then led the spiritual assembly to come forward and examine Yi Suan's injuries. The wound is fresh, not like a forgery. A slight mistake can be fatal. As for whether it was injured by a stick, I cannot distinguish, said Zhang Yuanshi expressionlessly. The empress nodded and casually stroked the gemstone ring on her hand. Ayu, go and invite the king of Qi, and bring his newly married queen of Qi to this palace as well. The steward took orders and left. The empress said again, Dr. Hua and Miss Yi will stay and wait for the dispatch, and the others will disperse. The crowd cheered and retreated, leaving only the empress and a few palace attendants, as well as Yi Suan, the master and disciple, and the emperor lying in bed to rest. As we approached the corner, the head nurse only returned to report. She whispered a few words to the empress, and soon she asked Yi Suan to hide behind the screen and listen to her arrangements. I have seen my mother before. I have seen the empress. After being summoned by the palace officials, King Qin Lin of Qi led a woman as beautiful as a flower to greet the empress. The empress, however, did not lift her eyes. She casually picked up a teacup, gently skimmed off the foam, and took an elegant sip before casually saying, Ayu, this palace asked you to invite the king of Qi and the queen of Qi. The king of Qi is here, right? Who is this girl? How can this palace not remember the queen of Qi, whom your majesty married, looking like this? The nanny in charge explained in cooperation, your majesty is wrongly accused. There is no concubine in the Qi prince's mansion. When the servant arrived, the prince was dining with this girl at the same table, showing great kindness. If the servant didn't do what he wanted, he would invite someone. Unexpectedly, he made a mistake. How could such a thing happen? The empress pretended to be surprised and turned to look at the king of Qi. Liner, tell your mother, who is this girl? Speaking to Empress Dowager, my father's son Ruofeng. The woman smiled coquettishly and spoke softly like a yellow warbler from the valley. Unfortunately, the empress didn't eat this trick at all and didn't even have the patience to listen to her finish. The king of Qi has no mouth, he wants you to speak for him. The empress gave a cold glance, and the woman shuddered as if she had no bones, leaning against the king of Qi. The king of Qi smiled and spoke up, this girl is too timid to withstand the intimidation of the empress mother. The empress took another sip of tea before casually saying, if I remember correctly, the legitimate daughter of the Sun Yushe family is called Sun Xueqing. She is a knowledgeable person, but you didn't look down on her before. I am pleased by the illegitimate daughter of the Sun Yushe family. Miss Xueqing is arrogant and domineering, with a malicious heart. I naturally don't like her, said the king of Qi, looking affectionately at the woman in his arms, her eyes soft enough to squeeze water out. The queen suddenly slammed the teacup onto the nearby table with a loud bang. Your Majesty did not marry you with this beautiful and delicate woman in your arms. Can you tell this palace how the well-behaved Princess Qi became her? I don't know, but after bowing down to the hall and entering the bridal chamber, I lifted the lid and saw that it was Rower. I was both surprised and delighted, perhaps because of the mercy of heaven, I couldn't bear to be separated from my beloved. The king of Qi seemed to have a feeling, and the more he spoke, the more outrageous it became. The empress couldn't bear to listen anymore, and after several attempts to stop it, she suddenly slapped the table. Enough is enough. Look at what you can handle. The queen of Qi, who later became aware of the situation, fell silent. She took a deep breath and asked in a calm tone, what the King of Chi meant was that this act of stealing dragons and turning phoenixes was not your intention, was it not your deliberate act? Father bestowed marriage, but my courtiers dare not rebel, said King Chi firmly. The Empress gave a faint response and turned to Sun Shuero, saying, since it wasn't the act of the Chi King, then you're causing trouble in the dark. Come on. The queen waved her hand and soon a guard rushed in to take Sun Shuero away. Empress, it's not me. Your Highness. Please save Roer. Roer is afraid. Sun Shuero burst into tears. The King of Chi immediately softened his heart. He held Sun Shuero in his arms and accused the Empress, Mother, Roer said it's not her. Where are you taking her? The Empress immediately laughed angrily and said, it wasn't your idea, nor was it her idea. Did the Empress Dowager Chi beat her own head in blood, and then let her marry on her behalf? Sun Shuero was still sobbing, but King Chi remained silent. The Empress glanced at the guards, who understood that they wanted to forcibly take Sun Shuero away from the arms of King Chi. The King of Chi became anxious for a moment, and he suddenly spoke out in a loud voice, Miss Yi has always been noble and upright. Perhaps she intends to make things easier for me and Roer. The so-called head-breaking and blood-bleeding is just a bitter meat trick. As he continued, he became more and more determined, and finally added, how can we blame everything on Roer without any basis or evidence? How innocent Roer is. At this moment, Yi Suan walked out from behind the screen. She originally wanted to watch a good show and see how the Empress would deal with these scumbags and lowly women, but she couldn't stand this ordinary man anymore. What a pity he spoke so eloquently. At this moment, she just wants to quickly draw a clear line with this scumbag, and the matter of revenge can be taken slowly. This disgusting thing cannot let them die too happily. His Highness the King of Chi has praised me falsely. I didn't even know I was so noble, Yi Su asked with a smile on her face. The Empress frowned almost imperceptibly, but the King of Chi's smile deepened. It turns out that Miss Yi is also here, no wonder the Queen Mother will know that Princess Chi has changed people. Yi Su knew what the King of Chi meant and wanted to splash dirty water on her head. But how could she be so easy to bully? Yi Suan put on a professional smirk before calmly saying, Your Highness already had a crush when you bestowed your marriage. Refusing to marry according to the decree is disloyalty, and marrying me according to the decree is injustice. It seems that your Highness chose to be loyal to your Highness between the two, but unfortunately, on the day of your wedding, I almost died, but your Highness held on to the beautiful woman in his heart. If I die, your Highness will naturally have both loyalty and righteousness, but unfortunately, my fate is great. But can there really be such a coincidence in the world? Your Highness said that all of this is because of my noble character and willingness to become a beautiful person. Your Highness really values me. Although I have no father or mother, I have a master to rely on me. I still cannot sacrifice my body for you and abandon my master. Furthermore, the prosperity of the world is all for profit, and the hustle and bustle of the world are all for profit. Among the three of us, I was the only one who narrowly escaped death and could not benefit from it. I thought that anyone with a brain would not say that this was such a ridiculous thing planned by me. Yi Su's words were well-founded, and at this moment, Sun Shuero, who had been crying and leaning on the King of Chi, blushed and said, Is it true that whoever can benefit from it is a criminal? It's not because someone with a heart has seen this point and deliberately framed it. Yi Suan couldn't help but chuckle. After saying so much about emotions, did this girl only hear a sharp word? She looked at the Empress's demeanor as if she wanted to deal with Sun Shuero, but she wouldn't touch the King of Chi. In order to avoid the Empress sending herself and the King of Chi into trouble in the end, she decisively said, Empress, I have said everything I need to say about the little girl. I don't want to say anything about this matter anymore, I just hope she can fulfill her promise. Chapter 4. Crazy Men Bite Women. You are listening at novel full.audio. Once the farce of substitute marriage is resolved, you will naturally be able to fulfill your wish. The Empress lifted her lips, and although she was speaking to Yi Suwen, her eyes were fixed on Sun Shuero like eagles and falcons. Sun Shuero didn't know that Yi Suwen was talking about harmony and separation. She only assumed that she was going to use the Empress's hand to get rid of herself and then sit firmly in the position of Empress Qi. In a hurry, she didn't pretend to be weak anymore. She straightened her waist and said angrily, "Madam, Yi Su is nothing but a commoner woman. She is shameless, has no money, no power, and is not worthy of your highness. She will only make your highness a topic of conversation for others. As your highness's biological mother, don't you feel sorry for your highness?" Seeing the Empress indifferent, she added with tears in her eyes, "My daughter's life is like an ant, and I don't hesitate to die. But if this causes a rift between you and his highness, you don't mind either. You are threatening this palace." The Empress's expression was calm, making it difficult to see her emotions clearly. Sun Shuero, however, only saw herself as poking the Empress's soft spot. She pretended to shrink into the arms of Prince Qi and said, "I dare not, my daughter." The Empress turned and asked the King of Qi, "Do you also think so?" However, the King of Qi silently tightened Sun Shuero's waist, with a posture that seemed to be the realization of becoming a beauty in a fit of anger. "I'm asking you a question from this palace," the Empress sternly scolded. The King of Qi was suddenly stimulated and said with righteous words, "If Queen Mother wants to kill Roer, let's kill her along with her courtiers. Where on earth is she so good that you are so captivated? You have even ignored your Majesty's will." The Empress covered her heart with resentment. The King of Qi smiled sadly and said, "It's useless to talk too much. If the Queen Mother wants to punish someone, just arrest her courtiers. Roer is innocent. It's okay if Miss Yi insists on dominating the position of the Queen of Qi. Our Prince of Qi Mansion doesn't want you to eat this meal, but I will always have Roer in my heart." What a touching couple of idiots. If it weren't for inheriting the memory of the original owner and knowing that neither of these two people were good birds, Yi Su might have been moved by them. "Madam," the little girl vaguely heard a cough inside. "Perhaps your Majesty is awake, do you want to go and take a look?" Worried that the Empress would be led by the Qi King's nose if she continued to entangle, Yi Su asked for an excuse to change the topic. The Empress immediately stood up to personally go and see the Emperor. When she saw King Qi following her, she raised her phoenix eyes and said coldly, "Wait outside." Going inside, I saw that the Emperor had indeed woken up and was now leaning against the bedside drinking medicine. "Who was making noise outside just now?" the Emperor asked hoarsely. Considering that the Emperor had just woken up from a serious illness, the Empress did not want him to worry about it. She wanted to conceal it and said, "The palace officials have committed a crime. My concubine has just warned me a few words." The Emperor, however, was not easy to deceive. "How did I hear the voice of King Qi? The Empress must not deceive me." The Empress knew she couldn't hide it, so she carefully explained the cause and effect to the Emperor. "The upright cannot be taught." The Emperor was angry and immediately coughed again. The Empress quickly comforted, "Your Majesty, take care of your health. I have already taught him a lesson." "How will you make a decision on this matter?" the Emperor asked again. After much deliberation, the Empress said, "At that time, your Majesty was seriously ill and the imperial physician was at a loss. Only Lady Yi stood up and said that there was a way to cure your Majesty, but there were conditions. My concubine followed her path and did not expect her to separate. She repeatedly promised her in public to avoid hurting your Majesty's heart. Now, I have to refute your Majesty's face." After the two of them separated, the position of Empress Qi was vacant. However, my concubine observed that Sun Shuero's character was not good. Although she was the daughter of Sun Yusher, she had already made a pact with Lin Ermu. But if she can't hold the position of Empress Dowager, how about making her a concubine? The Emperor remained calm and silent. After a long time, the palace officials came to report that the commander of the Forbidden Army, Su Lianshan, sought to see the Empress. Shen. Immediately, a tall general wearing a Rakshasa ghost mask and silver armor strode in. I have seen your majesty, Empress. Flat. Tell me, why did you come? The emperor sat up and asked. Su Lianshan was not in a hurry to speak, but instead looked at the empress with inquiry. Why, what else is there that I cannot know? The emperor looked somewhat angry. I dare not. Su Lianshan bowed and apologized. The empress also smiled and tried to smooth things out, saying, it's not intentional to keep it from your majesty, or to be afraid that those dirty things would be insulting to the Holy Spirit. The emperor snorted coldly and made it clear that he did not want to avoid it. Su Lianshan then stated, this morning, a corpse was found at the entrance of the Qi prince's mansion, which caused a lot of discussion among the people. It should not be my responsibility to handle this matter, but I am afraid that the spread of the matter will damage the royal dignity. Therefore, the Empress Dowager sent her officials to investigate the identity of the deceased. Did you find out whose family it belongs to? The emperor asked with a lingering interest. Su Lianshan replied, the deceased's name is Meng Er and he lives in Donglin Lane. He came from a poor family and was originally a servant of Sun Ruofang's imperial censor's mansion. He was expelled by his master's family for stealing property. He is a gambler and often frequents the fireworks and wine alley. He once threw 1,000 gold coins 3 days ago at the Chunshao Pavilion, using silver ingots engraved with the seal of the Qi prince's mansion. However, he has not heard any news of the loss reported by the Qi prince's mansion recently. In addition, the cause of death was suffocation, not due to ropes, and his methods were ruthless. I suspect that the perpetrator was a skilled expert. I didn't know that Lianshan was still a skilled investigator, the emperor said with a smirk. However, Su Lianshan said, I will fulfill my duties and responsibilities for your majesty and empress. That's all for this matter. You don't need to intervene anymore, just step back, the emperor said hesitantly. After Su Lianshan left, the emperor asked the palace staff to call in the few people waiting outside. King Qi, do you have something to say to me? King Qi knew in his heart that the emperor must have known everything. Princess Qi has changed people, and he did not follow the order to marry Yisuan. He is already disloyal, so he can no longer carry an unjust reputation. I know what my father wants to ask, everything is my son's idea, and it has nothing to do with Roer. Do you still have reason, you hypocritical thing? The emperor scolded angrily and coughed hard. However, the king of Qi showed no remorse and even said, if it weren't for the emperor's disorderly arrangement of the Mandarin duck genealogy, how could my courtiers be here? Alright, in the end, it turned out that I was wrong. The emperor coughed a few more times, and after calming down a bit, he said again, that's it. Your marriage with Miss Yi is now over, and it's none of your business to marry a man or a woman in the future. Thank you, father. The king of Qi guessed that the emperor was just angry, but still couldn't wait to take this matter seriously. Yi Suan also felt that the emperor was speaking angrily. After all, there was no evidence to support her words. When she was given a marriage, there was really a decree, so she did not show any joy on her face and still stood there in a proper manner. Sure enough, the emperor then said, don't be too happy too early. I heard that a corpse was found at the entrance of your mansion this morning. Chapter 5. Summation and Separation. You are listening at novel full.audio. Yes, the king of Qi replied calmly. He was not surprised at all that the emperor would know about this matter, but for now, he is uncertain to what extent the emperor has mastered the situation. He put away his rebellious demeanor, looking a bit calm, and finally had some of the demeanor that a prince should have. What is your opinion on this? The emperor asked again. After hesitating for a moment, the king of Qi finally decided to pretend to be foolish and leave himself clean. He said, I apologize for my foolishness. I have no knowledge of that person, and I really don't understand why he committed suicide at the entrance of my mansion. The emperor then cast his gaze expressionlessly towards Sun Shuero next to the king of Qi. What do you think? Sun Shuero hesitated for a moment and said pitifully, my daughter is frightened. It is the responsibility of the officials in the government office to resolve the case. As a woman of the same age, I dare not speak recklessly. I'll let you speak, the emperor coughed impatiently. Sun Shuero said again, I have no idea what His Highness the Prince of Qi cannot think of. The emperor suddenly stretched his face and turned to look at Yi Su, asking, you speak. King Qi and Sun Shuero, two husbands, were singing along with their wives. Yi Suan wouldn't pretend to be confused and treat the emperor like a fool, just like them. She was the one who killed the person, but it was also that lewd man who sought his own death. No matter what information the emperor has in his hands, she must make the situation develop in a favorable direction for her. Returning to your majesty, the young lady thought that whether the deceased had committed suicide or not would be another matter. Yesterday was the day of your highness's grand wedding, which is well known to everyone. He died at the entrance of his highness's mansion at this critical moment, indicating that someone was trying to find his highness. His highness said he had never met him before, but the young lady thought that perhaps his highness was busy with high-ranking officials and had dealt with him before. Now that he has forgotten, it is also possible. If not, your highness should carefully consider whether there is any animosity with others in daily life, and whether there is a possibility of revenge from enemies. After Yi Suan finished speaking, she respectfully bowed to the emperor and humbly said, I have limited knowledge and some humble opinions. If I make a mistake, I hope your majesty can forgive me. The emperor did not expect that both the king of Qi and Sun Shuero would avoid the heavy and prioritize the light, while Yi Suan began to analyze it in a logical manner. For a moment, I couldn't help but take a second glance at Yi Suan, speculating whether her past clumsiness was intentional. At this moment, the king of Qi sneered and said discontentedly, listen to Miss Yi, why is this all my fault? Your highness, be cautious. I am just discussing things from the facts. Speaking of which, although I have not read much, I have heard that gentlemen beg for themselves and villains beg for others. Yi Suan smiled slightly, showing a calm and unassuming demeanor. What a petty person begging everyone. I never knew that Miss Yi was so eloquent before. Prince Qi smiled on his face, but his tone of voice seemed to wish he could devour Yi Suan alive in the next second. Yi Suan still wanted to speak back, but out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of the emperor's face becoming increasingly ugly, and he immediately fell silent. Sun Shuero didn't have the vision to see it. When Yi Suan mocked King Qi as a villain, she immediately spoke up and said, Your Highness, what kind of identity can you arrange? Immediately after, the king of Qi agreed, she's just a girl from the mountains and fields. Rower, please don't have the same understanding as her. Sun Shuero obediently nodded and looked at the king of Qi with tenderness, her face coquettish. At this moment, the emperor said coldly, but I feel that you are not even as good as mountain girls. The thunder and lightning on the flat ground were like this, and the king of Qi suddenly sounded an alarm in his heart. He was thinking about how to defend himself, but the emperor said lightly, I heard that the deceased's name is Meng Er. He was once a servant of the Sun Imperial Censor's mansion. There are many people in the mansion with mixed eyes, and courtiers usually only do some needlework in the boudoir, even if they don't know it. Sun Shuero didn't expect the emperor to suddenly mention this, and her face turned pale, her knees softened, and she almost collapsed on the ground. The emperor didn't even look at her and then said expressionlessly, I heard that 3 days ago he threw 1,000 gold coins at the Spring Lantern Pavilion, and the silver ingots he used had the seal of your Qi prince's mansion. The king of Qi was much more energetic than Sun Shuero. His expression remained unchanged and he quickly came up with a speech. Father and emperor have forgotten about this matter even if they don't mention their children and ministers. A few days ago, there were thieves in the mansion and their belongings were stolen. Perhaps it was this Meng Er who did it. The emperor snorted coldly, so what's the solution for him dying at the entrance of your mansion? Should I ask Su Lianshan to interrogate each of your servants one by one? I understand my mistake, said the king of Qi, losing his composure. What's wrong with you? The emperor sneered. I shouldn't deceive my father and emperor. What else? Shouldn't. Flattery goes against one's will. Disobeying orders. Upon hearing what he wanted to hear, the emperor nodded in satisfaction. If you know you're wrong, then your marriage to Miss Yi. Before the emperor could finish speaking, Yi Suan interrupted at the right time. Your Majesty, please think twice. The emperor, with sharp eyes, glanced at Yi Suan. Your Majesty specially arranged for my daughter to marry His Royal Highness the Prince of Qi. She deeply felt the immense grace of the emperor, but she was not fortunate enough. On the day of her wedding, she was replaced by someone and almost lost her life. For the rest of her life, I also want to live a good life and hope to meet a good person, a couple for a lifetime, rather than serving a husband with others. I hope your Majesty can succeed. Yi Suan lowered her eyebrows and eyes, looking very sincere. The emperor, however, seemed tired and closed his eyes, not in a hurry to answer. Yi Suan waited for a long time without any results, so he could only talk about the empress's promise. Yesterday, your Majesty suddenly experienced an emergency. When the situation was critical, the empress once said that as long as your Majesty improved, she could do 10 things for the little girl. The little girl was not greedy and had no other requests. I hope your Majesty and the empress can achieve success. The queen silently pushed the emperor. The emperor then opened his eyes as if waking up from a dream and asked Yi Su, you said you don't want to serve a husband with others and want a pair of people for a lifetime. Yes, Yi Su replied confidently. The emperor pursed his lips and gestured for the empress to bring tea. He moistened his throat before saying, as you wish, let's call it a day. Your Majesty Xie, Yi Su asked with a smile on her face. To be safe, she even tentatively asked the emperor, after all, in the eyes of the world, my daughter has already married into the Qi prince's mansion yesterday. Could you please ask His Highness Qi to write a letter of separation? The emperor, however, curled his lips in a secretive manner and said, it doesn't matter. Your marriage with the king of Qi will be invalidated. I will draft a new decree to betroth you to the commander of the Forbidden Army, the god of war of Anyang. Su Lianshan. Yi Su widened her eyes and asked, what is this operation? But Yi Suan wanted to say that she wanted to meet a good person, a couple for the rest of her life. The emperor seemed to have anticipated what she was going to say and added, Su Aiqing is young and talented, and he is also the god of war in Anyang. Can't he be considered a good person? As for you, if you want to have one pair of people for a lifetime, I will inform the world. If Su Aiqing dares to betray you with 2 or 3 hearts in the future, he will be demoted to a commoner. Are you satisfied with this? Chapter 6. Marrying as a wife and running to be a concubine. You are listening at novel full.audio. Your Majesty, Yi Su asked, taking a deep breath and bowing respectfully. She knew in her heart that the emperor wanted to demonstrate the inviolability of his imperial power. Those who follow others prosper, and those who oppose others should not expect to have any good fruit to eat. Everyone present is his chess piece, and if there is any further objection, the emperor may be up to something. Rather than engaging in meaningless disputes, it's better to retreat in a hurry. It is rumored that Su Lianshan has an ugly appearance and a scar the size of a bowl on his forehead. He wears a Rakshasa ghost mask all year round, but in fact, his true appearance is even more terrifying than the mask on his face. It is true that he is the commander of the Forbidden Army, but it is more appropriate to say that he is the god of war of Anyang, rather than the god of killing. In his early years of warfare, there was not enough food and grass ahead. It is said that he once slaughtered enemy generals and ate their flesh and blood, so much so that the enemy retreated when they heard his name. The live Yen Luo, who kills without blinking an eye, and this ugly girl who knows no bounds, can be considered a match made in heaven and earth. Sun Shuero half leaned on the body of King Qi to gloat and burst into flower. The cancellation of Yi Suwen's marriage with the King of Qi means that the position of the Queen of Qi has been vacated. The King of Qi couldn't wait to straighten Sun Shuero up. Father, since the marriage between my son and Miss Yi has been abandoned, is Roer. However, he just started, and the emperor's gaze at him visibly became indifferent. But the King of Qi still didn't give up. Even though he knew that the emperor didn't like to listen, he stubbornly wanted to give it a try. Father, my son, and Roer truly love each other, he said. The emperor gave a cold smile and issued a soul torture, truly. Are you really in love with her, or are you the power behind her? The affectionate face of the King of Qi cracked for a moment, and soon he firmly said, my son loves her. Please allow me to treat him as a legitimate consort. Empress Zheng. She doesn't need to think about it in this lifetime. Since you're not the one who admires the power behind her, I'll make her a lowly concubine of the Qi prince's mansion. The emperor closed his eyes, too lazy to look at them again. The smile on Sun Shuero's face froze instantly. Why can she only be a lowly concubine? In a moment of desperation, she tugged at the sleeve of King Qi, who was also full of indignation. Father, Roer is the daughter of the imperial censor Sunday. I don't know how much better she is than Miss Yi in terms of background. Why is Miss Yi a legitimate concubine, but Roer wants to be a lower-level concubine? The emperor finally became angry. Do you ask me the reason? I still want to ask you. Since ancient times, I have been married and run to be a concubine. You two have no matchmaker and committed ugly things. Why do you still have the face to speak up here? If you don't mention it, then forget it. If you mention it, this woman can only be a lowly concubine of your Qi prince's mansion in this lifetime. Is my daughter so unbearable? Sun Shuero felt that the sky had collapsed. Her father is an imperial censor who shoulders the responsibility of supervising various officials. Although she is a commoner, she has unlimited fame and is even more prestigious than her eldest sister at home. In terms of talent and family background, how many women in the capital can be stronger than her? If she were just a lowly concubine, why would she plan like this? At this moment, the emperor finally gave Sun Shuero a serious glance. After a long silence, he said, daughter of the Sun family, don't say I won't give you a chance. If you sever ties with King Qi now, I can still accept it. You go home and let your father find another marriage with you. How about that? Sun Shuero remained silent, only looking at the King of Qi with tears streaming down her face, wanting to say that she would still rest. The emperor waved his hand and said, I'm tired, let's all scatter. Yi Suwen didn't want to stay for a long time, so she hurriedly left with Hua Baichao. King Qi and Sun Shuero didn't want to leave, but there was no reason to stay. How did Meng Er die? As soon as he left the Dragon Song Hall, the King of Qi caught up and stopped Yi Su. Your Highness, isn't he asserting that he committed suicide? Yi Su asked, lifting her lips and not answering a rhetorical question. King Qi snorted coldly, we both know that he cannot commit suicide. He was with you last night, originally. Before King Qi could finish speaking, Yi Suwen pushed him away in disgust and said coldly, I should have died, right? Who helped you? Qi Wang grabbed Yi Su again and asked angrily. Who helped me, King Qi? Yi Su asked with a cold smile. Speaking of which, I also want to thank King Qi. If it weren't for your conspiracy and framing, there wouldn't be me today. Can you say it again? King Qi was furious, his eyes red with anger, and he grabbed Yi Suwen's neck, as if to vent the anger he had received from the emperor on her. What's wrong with King Qi? Hua Baichao immediately stepped forward and tried to rescue Yi Suwen from King Qi's hand. Unexpectedly, King Qi kicked him away with a fierce kick. Yi Suwen took the opportunity to flip his sleeve and a few silver needles pierced the tiger's mouth of the King of Qi. The king of Qi felt his hands suddenly numb and uncontrollably let go. Next time, it won't be your highness's hand that pricked it, Yi Suan said sternly, touching her neck as she got away. As she spoke, she came to Hua Baicao's side and asked with concern, "Is master injured?" Hua Baichao shook his head and stood up with the help of Yi Suan. At this point, King Qi had already been assisted by Sun Shuero in pulling out the silver needle from the tiger's mouth. "You're so good, Yi Suan. How dare you poison the king of Qi?" Sun Shuero asked. Yi Su sneered, "Why is he going to kill me? Can't I fight back yet? Even if you were executed by his highness, it would be your blessing." Sun Shuero's eyes turned red with anger, and she gritted her teeth and claws as if she wanted to tear Yi Suan apart. Yi Su asked coldly, "I can't bear this blessing. I can't even ask the king of Qi for it, as Sun Shijie admires it so much." "You." Sun Shuero was stabbed in pain by Yi Suan, and for a moment could only point at Yi Suan, trembling with anger. At this moment, the king of Qi comforted Sun Shuero and said arrogantly, "I was just a momentary oversight. You, a powerless and ugly girl, think you can beat me." Upon hearing these words, Yi Suan immediately burst into laughter. "Your highness is now out of favor with your majesty, and Sun's concubine can only be relegated to a lower rank. Will Sun Yushe still support your highness? As a noble person, even if you have fought against me, a powerless little girl, what if you have the ability to claim the throne? Your highness, just be careful not to let the bamboo basket go empty. Open your mouth and keep your mouth shut, my servant. How much do you think you are better than me? Su Lianshan is a famous living Yen Luo, and his highness can still reward you with a whole body. He is afraid he will leave you with nothing to eat." At this point, Sun Shuero swept away her previous gloomy expression, as if in an instant she had already seen the bleak future of Yi Suan being tormented by Su Lianshan. As long as Yi Su doesn't ask well, she thinks it's good. Yi Suan, however, didn't take it seriously. "I don't need to worry about my affairs, Concubine Sunday. Anyway, your majesty has already spoken, General Su will only have me. And your highness Qi, it is impossible to hold a lowly concubine for a lifetime, so let the whole world laugh at you for nothing." Sun Shuero's face suddenly changed as she looked at the king of Qi expectantly. The king of Qi looked ugly, but he still comforted her and said, "Rower, you must believe in me. I am the only one in my heart. He may only have you in his heart, but his concubines will marry in one after another, and you will always be a lowly concubine without any status." Almost as the voice of the king of Qi finished speaking, Yi Suan smiled and spoke sarcastically, dismantling his platform. "See if I don't tear your mouth apart." Sun Shuero was so stimulated that she couldn't bear it, but instead of asking King Qi for an explanation, she turned her head and rushed towards Yi Suan. Upon seeing this, Yi Suan deftly made way to the side, to the extent that Sun Shuero lost her weight for a moment and even fell onto a dog gnawing on the mud. Why did Concubine Sun perform this grand ceremony? "I can't bear it, young lady," Yi Su asked teasingly. However, Sun Shuero seemed to have been stimulated too much. She no longer waved her teeth and claws, but instead collapsed on the ground, feeling a bit pitiful, silently shedding tears. But Yi Suan is not yet able to sympathize with her. If not, where will the original owner be placed? Taking advantage of the opportunity for King Qi to comfort Sun Shuero, she quickly fled the scene with Hua Baichao. The next day, Yi Suan received the decree of marriage and a palace pass token. The emperor allowed her to enter the palace for a follow-up examination, and holding a token would allow her to travel freely in the palace. Chapter 7. Entering the palace again. You are listening at novel full.audio. In the midst of summer, all things are beautiful, with lush vegetation and vibrant vitality. Although Yi Suan has entered the palace several times, he is often led by palace attendants. This is the first time he has entered and exited the deep palace. She followed her memory and headed towards the Dragon Song Hall. As she passed by a small garden, she vaguely saw two women arguing through the flowers and trees. A woman in the palace, dressed in luxurious attire and with a delicate voice, is either the emperor's wife or concubine, or the emperor's daughter. Left and right are not easy to provoke. Yi Suan originally thought that it would be better to take a detour with one more thing than another, but unfortunately, she was caught by one of the women wearing red palace attire. Who's sneaking around there? Yi Su had no choice but to walk out and said, I have seen a noble woman before. Noble person. What noble person? This palace is Princess Rongan. Who are you? Princess Rongan Qin lifted her chin and said arrogantly. With a tone of 2, 5, or 8,000 yuan, Yi Suan knew without hesitation that this person was not a good person. Little girl Yi Suan replied politely with lowered eyebrows and eyes. Oh, it turned out to be the ugly girl that my imperial brother refused to marry. Princess Rongan pretended to be surprised. At this moment, another woman dressed in goose-yellow palace attire timidly said, Sister, Miss Yi is the life-saving benefactor of our father. Humph, the life-saving benefactor. If father really treated her as a life-saving benefactor, he wouldn't have married her to the living Yen Luo of Su Lianshan. Princess Rongan glared coldly at the woman in yellow, who immediately timidly shut her mouth. Princess Rongan immediately sneered again, however, I heard that Su Lianshan's face under the mask is extremely ugly. You two are considered ugly together. I don't think he will despise you. I never expected Princess Rongan to be someone who judges people based on their appearance, Yi Su asked with a gentle but resounding smile. It doesn't matter if you look down on me, but you shouldn't look down on General Su. Which person on the battlefield is unharmed? He is the god of war of Anyang, who fought hard for national peace and security. While enjoying the peace he earned with his blood, you slander him. Don't you feel ashamed? Princess Rongan is the legitimate daughter of the Empress and also the biological sister of King Qinlin of Qi. She grew up in a honey pot since childhood, and even the Emperor and Empress have never scolded her like this. Just an ugly girl, what qualifications do you have to say about me? Princess Rongan's face froze, and she gave a glance to the palace maid behind her. The palace maid immediately approached knowingly, holding Yi Su to her left and right. The woman in yellow became anxious when she saw the situation. She approached anxiously and said, Sister, what do you want to do? Princess Rongan kicked away the woman in yellow and said, even the lowly offspring of a lowly life deserve to be called my sister. As she finished speaking, she approached Yi Suan with a fierce smile on her face. She raised her hand high and saw that a slap was about to hit Yi Suan's face. At that moment, a scream of surprise suddenly came out. Princess Rongan fell on the flat ground. Did you mess with the ghost, right? Princess Rongan pointed at Yi Su and asked angrily before she could get up. Yi Su asked innocently, Princess, what kind of ghost can I do with my appearance? Princess Rongan, however, did not believe it. She helped the maid stand up and said, what are you pretending to be with me? Shuero has already told this palace. You ugly girl is full of bad luck and cunning. Shuero. The princess is talking about the concubine of the king of Qi. Not to mention between me and her, I am the victim. Princess Rongan's association with a mere concubine really opened her eyes. Yi Su asked with a smile, implying that Princess Rongan had surrendered her identity. Princess Rongan instantly exploded, but unfortunately it was not for herself. If it weren't for you, the ugly person, could Shuero be a concubine? She's the sister.In.Law in my heart, you don't even deserve to lift her shoes. Yi Suan shrugged and said, it's useless for the princess to say this to me. If you want her to be your sister.In.Law, you should go and beg your majesty. Unfortunately, your majesty said yesterday that she can only be a lowly concubine of the Qi prince's mansion in her lifetime. I have received the decree of marriage, and I think your sister.in-law Shiro should also receive the decree of giving her the status of lowly concubine. You have such a sharp mouth, look at me if I don't tear you apart. Princess Rongan raised her hand again, but she fell again. Who is it? Come out of this palace. I don't know if it's pain or anger. Princess Rongan gritted her teeth and twisted her face. However, in response to her, there was only the rustling sound of the wind blowing through the leaves. Tie her hands and gag her mouth for this palace, and bring her back to Lanshin Palace. Sister, Miss Yi must have something important to attend to when she enters the palace. How can you take her away without authorization? The woman in yellow hesitated and advised. Princess Rongan snorted coldly, Qin Chu, what should and shouldn't be said. You'd better have a clear idea, otherwise this palace will clean up with you. After speaking, she gave a glance to the palace maid beside her, gesturing to take the person away. Unexpectedly, a young eunuch approached and said, Where are you going, princess? Your Majesty has been waiting for Miss Yi to meet you for a long time. This ugly girl caused a fall in our palace, and we are about to take her back to teach her a lesson. Who are you? Why doesn't our palace remember someone like you serving our father? Princess Rongan leaned against the palace maid, her eyebrows erect, and her anger was not light. Little man Fong Liang, I was only recently transferred to your Majesty. It's understandable that the princess doesn't know. The eunuch arched his body and replied in a dignified manner. I'll spare you this time, but you won't have such good luck next time. Princess Rongan hesitated and decided to let Yi Suwen go. When the two disappeared from sight, Princess Rongan's close maid suddenly hesitated and said, Princess, I remember there was someone named Fong Liang next to the Empress. But last month, she was executed with a cane for committing a crime. Is this person the same name as her? Why didn't you say it just now? Princess Rongan's face immediately turned cold, giving the palace maid a sharp cut, and then being helped back to the palace. Besides, Yi Suwen was led by a eunuch to a rockery with 7 or 8 twists and turns. General, I have brought you. The eunuch bowed respectfully to the man wearing a Rakshasa ghost mask behind the rockery. The man nodded, gesturing for him to leave. After the eunuch left, he asked Yi Su, You don't seem surprised at all. A deep and hoarse voice with a unique magnetism, like a pot of aged wine, making people intoxicated. Unexpected, Yi Su asked solemnly, but it didn't sound like that at all. Even a man with no intention of continuing this topic. Let's go, I'll take you to see your Majesty. Oh, Yi Su obediently answered. It is said that Su Lianshan is a god-slaying general, a living Yenluo, who once ate human flesh and drank human blood. The rumors made him so terrifying, but Yi Suwen felt that the rumors might not be credible when she first saw him. One thing, he actually saved her secretly. Secondly, during the southern and northern dynasties of China, there was also a general wearing a mask. He is brave and skilled in battle, achieving great success. Under the mask, however, was a delicate and fair face, even more beautiful than a woman's. Is the general really ugly in appearance? Yi Su asked in a mysterious manner. Chapter 8. Assistance in Investigation. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. No one has ever dared to discuss his appearance in front of him, so Su Lianshan couldn't help but stop and explore Yi Suwen. Are you curious? Su Lianshan asked. If you say something, it's like splashing water. Yi Suwen didn't feel shy and replied confidently, I'm a bit curious. Princess Rongan just said that we're ugly together. I'm ugly because of the black spots on my face. As for the general, I've heard many rumors, but it's better to see them all at once. Su Lianshan didn't expect Yi Suwen to answer like this, and his eyes were clearly stunned for a moment. Immediately, he joked, Have you heard that anyone who has seen my true face has died by my sword? Yi Suwen shook his head and said, Your Majesty has married us, and the wedding date will be in March. Does the general plan to wear a mask and live with me for the rest of his life? Su Lianshan remained silent and coincidentally arrived at the Dragon Song Hall. The emperor was somewhat surprised when he saw the two people coming in together. After Yi Su asked about using needles to regulate the emperor's body, the emperor asked Su Lianshan, "Is Lianshan still satisfied with my marriage?" Su Lianshan looked official and said, "Your Majesty has given us a marriage, and I dare not disobey it." The emperor then turned and asked, "How has that matter been investigated?" "We are conducting an investigation into the dining room." The emperor understood and closed his eyes for a moment, then he said, "Most of the imperial physicians in the palace are useless. I will let Miss Yi cooperate with you to investigate. You two work together, and I think you can achieve twice the result with half the effort." "I obey the order." Su Lianshan bowed and accepted the order. Yi Su asked but was still in a state of mind, "What are we investigating?" She put the silver needle in her carrying bag and was about to leave when she heard that the emperor had arranged a task for her. "Lianshan will talk to you in detail, I'm tired." Unfortunately, the emperor had no intention of dispelling Yi Suan's doubts and directly issued an expulsion order. Yi Suan followed Su Lianshan and retreated. Su Lianshan is a sullen gourd, and if Yi Su doesn't ask, he doesn't say anything. There was nothing to say all the way, until Yi Suan couldn't hold back. "Your Majesty asked me to collaborate with you to investigate." "What is it to investigate?" "Poisoning incident." Su Lianshan spoke succinctly. Yi Suan just came back to his senses. The day before yesterday, the emperor suddenly became critically ill due to an emergency, but in fact, he was poisoned by a rare chronic poison. Although she has almost solved the poison, the person who poisoned it has not yet been discovered. If the emperor dies suddenly, who will be the biggest beneficiary? Yi Suan suddenly thought of something, and her heart was filled with ripples. "Are we going to the dining room?" Su Lianshan gave a faint response, unwilling to say a word more, as if he had carried out his words with great care. Yi Suan once thought he was a cold and aloof person, and only after meeting Su Lianshan did he know what true coldness is. Unfortunately, she didn't feel disgusted and inexplicably developed a desire for victory or defeat. At that time, the imperial physicians in the palace felt that His Majesty was just in a hurry. This was because His Majesty had a chronic poison that lay dormant for a long time and was usually difficult to detect. It would poison under specific circumstances, so it came in a fierce manner. Yi Suan generously shared what she knew with Su Lianshan, attempting to break through his psychological defenses. Sure enough, Su Lianshan immediately slowed down his pace, as if pondering something. "But that's all there is to it." Yi Suan reminded again, "What do you think it means to be poisoned under specific circumstances?" "It means that the person who poisoned has been plotting for a long time. Instead of investigating in the dining room, it is better to focus on investigating what Your Majesty did on that day and who he met." Su Lianshan quickly concluded. He finally spoke up and said something decent, but before Yi Suan could express his emotions, he disappeared without a trace. "What kind of person is that?" Yi Su muttered, and then decided to go back home. However, she had only taken a few steps when a burly old lady and two palace maids met her. "Miss Yi, Princess, please." "No time," Yi Su asked with a pout, knowing without hesitation that it must be Princess Rongan's vanguard. "That's not up to you." The old lady waved her hand, and the two palace maids came forward knowingly, intending to forcibly take Yi Suan away. Yi Su asked with a slight smile, "Just you guys?" "I'm afraid they're still a bit tender." She reached out and took out a few silver needles, ready to go. The old lady's eyes were sharp, so she naturally didn't miss her little movements. "Miss Yi, you can avoid the first day of junior high school, but not the 15th. I advise you to come with us for a while." Yi Suan didn't take it seriously. "If you want to see me, let your princess come and see me in person." As she spoke, she rolled her sleeves and the silver needle pierced the palace maid's acupoint, causing them to immediately soften and collapse to the ground. Miss Yi has such a great face. At this moment, Princess Rongan, supported by a palace maid, limped over. Yi Suan raised her eyebrows, showing a calm demeanor. What did Princess Rongan Baba come to me for? You ugly girl, what's there to be so naughty about? Princess Rongan looked at Yi Suan with resentment. She waved to the guard beside her, gesturing for him to catch Yi Suan. Yi Suan looked sarcastically at Princess Rongan, who couldn't even stand steadily. At least I can move freely and don't need anyone to help me, he said. You. Princess Rongan immediately became extremely angry. What are you still waiting for? If you don't arrest this ugly girl for me, I will chop her into pieces and feed her to the dog. The guards just stepped forward and launched an attack on Yi Suan. At first glance, the guards' Kong Wu were powerful, while Yi Suan was delicate and weak. It was a foregone conclusion which one would win or lose. However, no matter how the guards punched and slapped, Yi Suan could always dodge with ease. Princess, your guards are not very good either, Yi Su asked. After easily handling the guards, she didn't forget to speak out and provoke. However, when she turned around, she found Princess Rongan quietly approaching, holding a dagger in her hand and fiercely stabbing her. Suddenly, she was too close and could only avoid it. Speaking quickly, but with a clang, Princess Rongan's hand slipped and her dagger flew out. You're injured. Su Lianshan fell from the sky, looking at Yi Suan's blood-stained sleeve. He said calmly. Didn't you leave? Yi Suan frowned in pain, feeling that the injury was truly unjust. If she doesn't avoid it, she won't get hurt instead. Furthermore, if Su Lianshan didn't take action, she would have avoided it. For a moment, I didn't know whether to blame myself or Su Lianshan. General Su, why are you here? Princess Rongan blushed and stuttered. Su Lianshan did not answer, but coldly glanced at Princess Rongan, wearing the Rakshasa ghost mask on his face, which appeared particularly terrifying. Princess Rongan was already in the wrong. When she was so scared by him, she didn't have the courage to find fault anymore. She just found an excuse and ran away. Yi Suan never expected that Princess Rongan, who was arrogant in front of her, would see Su Lianshan as if she had seen a cat with a mouse, afraid of it. She suddenly became curious about what kind of posture the King of Qi would have in front of Su Lianshan. Anyway, currently it seems that Su Lianshan is a good backer. If the two can work together in a friendly manner, her path of revenge may be much smoother. At this moment, Su Lianshan took out a handkerchief from his arms and threw it onto Yi Suan. Wrap up. Yi Suan picked up the handkerchief, but his hand was not in a hurry to move. The general hasn't said why he's coming back yet. Chapter 9. Crossing Rivers and Dismantling Bridges. You are listening at novel full.audio. You didn't explain clearly what the so.called specific situation is. Yi Su was taken aback and then dumbfounded. She injured her right arm and it was a bit difficult to bandage it with one hand, so she pouted at Su Lianshan. Although Su Lianshan was unwilling, he still took the handkerchief and roughly bandaged it for her. Afterwards, Yi Su asked and said, "It's wine. Your Majesty is a person who has been ill for a long time, and although the situation is getting better and better in the front row, it's not advisable to drink alcohol. But on the day of the Qi King's wedding, when your Majesty went to observe the ceremony, perhaps he had a small drink or two. Are you saying that your Majesty's poisoning was caused by drinking?" Su Lianshan asked suspiciously. Yi Suan nodded and said, "If you don't believe me, you can send someone to investigate. Your Majesty's diet should be mainly light, as I expected. Except for the day of King Qi's wedding, your Majesty has no recent record of drinking alcohol." Su Lianshan glanced at Yi Suan with an unclear meaning and then said lightly, "Follow up." Yi Suan thought he would take him to investigate, but Su Lianshan actually sent her directly to the palace gate. He said, "You go back first. Why don't she take care of it?" Yi Su was full of questions. "General, what does this mean? You're injured. Su Lianshan's words are concise and clear, with a flat tone that does not cause any ripples. Although it was a matter of concern, Yi Suan always felt that it was not that simple. At that moment, a man dressed as a guard hurriedly arrived. "General, Ding Daong has died." "When did it happen?" Su Lianshan asked. The man said, "Just discovered, dying at home seems like suicide depending on the situation." Leading the way ahead. Su Lianshan hurriedly walked away like a gust of wind as he spoke. Watching his sudden disappearance, Yi Su asked with an inexplicable expression. "Are you leaving now? What is it?" She even took the initiative to throw out an olive branch, hoping to form an alliance and work together. As a result, he only wanted to be a lone ranger. Sure enough, she should still rely on herself and cultivate her own power as soon as possible. Firstly, she wants to avenge the original owner, and secondly, the king of Qi probably won't let her go. Also, Sun Shuero, if she can instigate Princess Ronan to deal with her today, such things are likely to happen in the future. After all, an ugly girl with no money, no power, anyone feels like they can step on it. Only by being strong enough can one not be trampled upon, be fearless, and protect everything they want to protect. After returning home, Yi Suan discussed with Hua Baichao about opening a medical clinic. In her opinion, between power and money is still easier to obtain. Hua Baichao thought that there was no hope of returning to the mountains for seclusion. If he opened a medical clinic, it would not only benefit the world and the people, but also provide a livelihood, so he answered Yi Suan's question. The next day, Yi Suan led Jun Qinzi to find a suitable shop. Who would have thought that after wandering for a while, either the asking price was too high or the location was too remote, there was no suitable one. At this moment, I happened to pass by the largest medical clinic in the capital city. Jishitang. Yi Suan thought to herself that it wouldn't be good to have such an ugly face when she opened a clinic in the future, so she decided to take medicine and go back to cure the black spots on her face. As I was about to enter, I heard a burst of heart-wrenching cries from children. Yi Suan only thought it was a child from whose family who was knocking and hitting, shouting pain, and didn't take it to heart. After telling the apprentice at the medical school about the necessary medicinal herbs, she started chatting with Jun Qinzi. Until a burly and dark-skinned young man pulled the doctor and begged, "Doctor, please take a look again." The fishbone stuck in his throat for day and night, and he couldn't swallow it or spit it out. He's still so young, how can he bear it? The doctor waved his hand and looked very helpless. "Big brother, why don't you hire someone else?" "It's because I refuse to save him. The fishbone is stuck in his throat, invisible and hard to touch. I've already told you all the methods I know yesterday, but they have no effect." The two of them were deadlocked without any results, and in their entanglement, someone suddenly reminded them, "Stop arguing, that child is going to be dead." Yi Suan looked around and saw the child crying incessantly on the side, as if he hadn't picked it up in a breath. He blushed and was rolling his eyes, clutching his neck and trembling. The man suddenly had no idea and could only plead with red eyes, "Help him. Doctor, please help him. This. He's going to suffocate." The doctor was sweating profusely in a hurry, but there was no movement in his hands, and he couldn't even take a step, just watching. Upon seeing the situation, Yi Suan quickly stepped forward. Her sleeve spun around and a few silver needles pierced the acupoints of the child, such as Taiyuan and Laogong. "Don't stick there, pack up a piece of land and lie down for him." Upon hearing this, the man quickly moved a few benches and pieced them together. Yi Suan took the opportunity to put the person up. Immediately, she peeled off the child's shirt and continued to apply the needle. In no time, the child's complexion returned to normal, but he looked weak and was panting heavily with lingering palpitations. "It's really amazing. How do you call the girl?" Watching Yi Suan pull the child back from the gates of hell in an instant, the man breathed a sigh of relief and earnestly asked. At this moment, the doctor at the clinic said sourly, "It's just a small trick," but she took the lead. Yi Suwen was here to buy medicine, but she didn't want to conflict with him. She followed his words and said, "I'm in a hurry for a moment. Don't take it for granted. It's said that Jishitang is the largest medical clinic in the capital city, and I can't compare my tricks to yours." Coincidentally, the apprentice had already packaged the medicinal herbs and handed them over to Jun Qianzi. Yi Suwen then exchanged a glance with them and left in agreement. Unexpectedly, as soon as he left the door, the man chased after him with a child in his arms. "Miss, stay behind." Yi Su stopped and asked suspiciously, "What are you doing with me?" The man smiled foolishly and said, "Miss Gao Yi, I will do good deeds without leaving a name, but I cannot forget my kindness." "Oh, how will you repay me later?" Yi Su asked with a raised eyebrow, looking very interested. The man looked at the child in his arms, hesitated for a moment, and then licked his face and said, "The villain's name is Qian Sanyuan. He works under General Su, and this child is my elder brother's orphan. Please send the Buddha to the west and help him remove the fish bones. From now on, the villain will treat you as a cow and a horse to repay you." Upon hearing a few words from General Su, Yi Suwen immediately thought of herself being thrown at the palace gate by Su Lianshan yesterday. She didn't take it seriously and said, "Being a cow or a horse. That's a good idea. You wanted to repay me, but ended up asking me to do something. This is a loss-making business, and I'm not interested in it." After the words fell, Yi Suwen shook his hand and left. Qian Sanyuan still wanted to pursue, but was stopped by Jun Qianzi with a smile. "It's no use persistently fighting, you can do something practical." Qian Sanyuan looked at Jun Qianzi in confusion and said, "Please explain more clearly, young man." Jun Qianzi then coughed lightly twice before solemnly explaining his confusion. "My girl wants to start a shop, but unfortunately, she hasn't found a suitable one for a long time." Qian Sanyuan suddenly realized, "Thank you for guiding me." After speaking, he hurriedly caught up with Yi Suwen again and said, "Miss, stay behind. I have a shop on West Street that has been abandoned for a long time. I am willing to give it to you as a gift." Chapter 10. Open your eyes to money. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Yi Suwen stopped and tilted her head to inquire towards Jun Qianzi. Jun Qianzi, on the other hand, innocently spread his hand. His intention was to ask Qian Sanyuan to help find a shop. If Qian Sanyuan misunderstood, it was not his business. In the area of West Street, even the smallest shops are priced outrageously high. Is there a reason not to accept someone who delivers it to their door? Xiaoye, I see this fool is a sincere person, so don't make things difficult for him. Or do you mean you can't do anything with that fishbone and deliberately evade it? Seeing Jun Qianzi helping out, Qian Sanyuan quickly added, I truly appreciate your kindness. If you can lend me a helping hand, please help me, my nephew. After the matter is completed, I will have to thank you again. Do you think I'm the one who is open-minded when it comes to money? Yi Su asked, frowning and crossing her waist. Qian Sanyuan was stunned for a moment, afraid of offending Yi Su's question. He just said in a daze, no. It's a villain who can't repay you, only some yellow and white things are still available for sale. Seeing his silly appearance, Yi Suwen suddenly felt that she shouldn't blame him for Su Lianshan. I'm just someone who is open-minded when it comes to money. Hold the child and follow along. Yi Su sneered and immediately led the way ahead. According to Qian Sanyuan, he has tried several folk remedies and tried to make the child swallow or spit them out, but none of them worked. After taking the person home, Yi Suwen directly asked Jun Qianzi to find tweezers, spoons, and other items. She first asked the child to open their mouth wide, pressed a spoon on their tongue, and gently patted their back while guiding them to cough. After a while without any results, she held back the others, injected the child into a coma, and finally used tweezers to clip out the fishbone. Is it done? When Yi Suwen walked out of the room, Qian Sanyuan nervously asked. Yi Suwen didn't answer and only made way to the side. The child who had been crying recently now timidly crawled out from behind her. Xiaoyu has worried Uncle Sanyuan. Qian Sanyuan was overjoyed and suddenly picked up Xiaoyu. Excitedly, he threw her up and said, as long as Xiaoyu is okay. The two of them frolicked for a while, and when Qian Sanyuan's excitement had passed, they released Xiaoyu. He respectfully bowed to Yi Su and said, later on, I will present the deed of the shop with both hands, and I don't know the name of my benefactor. Yi Suwen. Yi Suwen hooked her lips and spoke concisely. Qian Sanyuan suddenly widened his eyes and said, Yi Suwen, the disciple of the divine Dr. Hua Baichao. Although Yi Suwen had been living in seclusion with Hua Baichao in the mountains and forests until the emperor became seriously ill and was forced to leave the mountains with Hua Baichao, no one in the capital city of Anyang knew that Yi Suwen had been with the divine Dr. Hua Baichao for more than 10 years, but he did not know any medical skills and was an ignorant and useless waste. In addition, when she went out today, she wore a veil on her face and couldn't see the black spots on her face, making it difficult for Qian Sanyuan to recognize. Therefore, there is this question. Yi Su shrugged and said, that's right. Near dusk, Qian Sanyuan came to the door with the house deed. After finding someone to witness the handover, Qian Sanyuan led Yi Suwen to the scene to take a look. This was originally a grocery store, and I didn't know how to manage it, so I kept it on hold. I heard from Xiao Qian that Miss Yi was planning to open a medical clinic, so I asked my brothers to help me tidy it up and purchase some useful items. Miss Yi, are you satisfied with it? Yi Suwen looked around and saw that the storefront was facing north and south, spacious and bright, with a simple layout. The medicine bucket counter, as well as commonly used utensils such as tables, chairs, and benches, were all in place. She even casually opened a few medicine cabinets, which were filled with medicinal herbs. This guy set up a shop for her for free, and then he prepared everything for her. She was naturally satisfied. Thank you, big brother. Yi Su asked with sincere gratitude. Qian Sanyuan smiled innocently and said, Miss Yi, just call me Sanyuan. Although I work under General Su, most of the time I play with Xiaoyu. If Miss Yi needs anything, just greet me. It's easy to say, Yi Su asked with a smile. The medical clinic is named Baichao Tang. Taking the key from Qian Sanyuan's hand, she returned home with great ambition. As soon as I arrived at the entrance of the alley, I met Hua Baichao who was searching for her. She said someone came from the palace and asked her to enter immediately. Yi Su raised an invisible eyebrow, her heart speaking later than she had imagined. She has never been someone who is willing to suffer losses. Princess Rongan caused trouble several times yesterday and even hurt her. She can pretend that nothing happened. Before Princess Rongan fled, she secretly gave her itching powder. It won't be life-threatening, it just makes her itch unbearable, the more she tickles, the more she tickles, the more she tickles, making it difficult to sleep and eat. But if not treated in time, sooner or later she will scratch herself into a pig's head. Originally, she had prepared this little thing for Sun Shuero and the King of Qi, and it was meant to be used on Princess Rongan as a minor punishment and a major warning. Yi Suwen handed the property deed and keys of the shop to Hua Baichao, and then followed the palace attendants into the palace. The sky is already dark, and the evening breeze brings waves of coolness. The Lanqin Palace is brightly lit. To prevent Princess Rongan from scratching her face, the Empress had ordered someone to tie her to the bed, so that even if the itching was unbearable, she could only wriggle around like a bug. Mother, I really can't stand it anymore. Please, Mother, I'm going crazy. Itchy. Itchy to death. As soon as Yi Suwen entered the Lanqin Palace, she heard Princess Rongan's heart-wrenching plea for mercy. Little girl Yi Suwen, I've seen Empress before. Yi Suwen saluted in a formal manner. The queen, however, seemed to have seen a savior and quickly welcomed her over. Miss Yi, stop bowing now. Hurry up and show Cece what's going on with her. Yi Suan was almost dragged by the queen to the bed of Princess Ronan. At first sight, she could not help laughing when she saw Princess Ronan tied up like a zongzi. Madam, Princess, this is? Yi Su asked, pretending to be puzzled. The Empress sighed and said with a headache, I don't know what's going on in this palace. She keeps making a fuss and itching. If she doesn't tie it up, she might lose a good piece of skin and flesh on her body. Is there such a thing? Yi Suan looked surprised and then asked, has the imperial physician seen it? The queen shook her head and said, either you're allergic or bitten by mosquitoes, there's no one that can be cured, otherwise we wouldn't have invited you. Yi Suan nodded knowingly and sat down at the bedside, pretending to examine Princess Ronan. Princess Ronan, who had been shouting and itching, suddenly rolled into the corner with her eyes wide open and agile. Let her go. Mother, you let her go. I don't want her to look. Sis, don't get angry, the Empress advised gently. Princess Ronan refused to listen, let her go. It's all because of her that I'm doing this. The Empress looked at Yi Su with suspicion and asked, is there anything wrong with what the princess said?